Every empire reaches a moment where it faces a choice. Raise taxes, cut spending, or print more money. History shows us which option leaders almost always choose, not because it works, but because it's easier, because it buys them time, because it postpones the pain until someone else is in charge. From ancient Rome to the Spanish Empire, from the British Crown to modern America, the story is disturbingly similar. Before an empire collapses, its money always changes first. The currency weakens, the coins are debased, the printing presses run faster, and once that happens, the collapse is already underway. You just can't see it yet. The citizens go about their lives, markets still function, buildings still stand, but beneath the surface, the foundation is crumbling. Today, we're going to walk through that pattern step by step, empire by empire. Because if you understand what happened to them, you'll recognize what's happening now. Section 1, money is trust. Money is not just paper. It's not coins. It's not numbers on a screen. Money is trust. Trust that a piece of paper will hold value tomorrow. Trust that a digital number can buy food, shelter, and safety. Trust that when you go to bed tonight, your savings will still mean something in the morning. For most of human history, money was tied to something real: gold, silver, salt, grain, physical commodities you could touch, weigh, and measure. This wasn't arbitrary. It was practical. A gold coin had value not because a king said so, but because gold itself was scarce, durable, and universally desired. But when empires grow powerful, they begin to believe they can bend that trust. They think, we're strong enough that people will accept whatever we declare as money. And for a while, they're right until they're not. That's when the pattern begins. It always starts the same way, with confidence, with power, with the belief that this time is different. But the laws of economics don't care about confidence. And history has shown again and again that when you break the trust in money, everything else breaks too. Section 2, Rome's silver lie. Let's go back 2,000 years. At its peak, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. It was the most powerful civilization the world had ever seen. And at the heart of that power was a coin, the denarius. Early on, during the reign of Augustus, each denarius contained about 95% pure silver. Soldiers were paid in denarii, taxes were collected in denarii, trade across the empire depended on it. The coin was trusted because it had real value, but wars were expensive. Legions needed to be paid, borders needed defending, barbarians needed bribing. And so Roman emperors made a decision. They kept the coin. Same size, same weight, same face of the emperor stamped on the front. But they quietly reduced the silver inside it. At first, just a little. Maybe 90% silver instead of 95%. Who would notice? But once the process started, it never stopped. By the time of Emperor Nero, the denarius was down to 80% silver. Under Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, it dropped to 75%. By the 3rd century, during the crisis of the 3rd century, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. It was essentially a bronze coin with a silver wash. Same coin, same imagery, almost no value, and the consequences were immediate. Prices exploded. A loaf of bread that cost 1 denarius suddenly cost 10, then 100. Merchants stopped accepting the coin. They wanted payment in goods, in land, in anything real. Citizens hoarded old coins, the ones that still had silver, and spent the debased ones as fast as possible. This is called Gresham's law. Bad money drives out good money. The Roman government responded by minting even more coins, trying to pay its bills. But that only made things worse. Inflation spiraled, the economy collapsed, trade dried up. Soldiers mutinied when their pay became worthless. Rome didn't collapse overnight, but its money collapsed first, and once the money went, the empire followed. By the time Rome officially fell in 476 AD, the collapse had been baked in for centuries. It started with a simple choice: debase the currency or face the hard truth. Rome chose debasement, and history recorded the result. Section 3, the Spanish gold illusion. Fast forward 1,000 years. Spain thought it had found the ultimate solution: gold, mountains of it. As Spanish conquistadors plundered the Americas, shiploads of gold and silver flooded back to Europe. Spain became the wealthiest nation on earth on paper. The Spanish crown could fund wars, build armadas, and finance expeditions across the globe. But something strange happened. Instead of prosperity, prices skyrocketed. Bread became more expensive. Labor costs soared. Everyday goods that were once affordable became luxuries. Economists today call this the price revolution of the 16th century, but the people living through it just called it suffering. Here's what Spain didn't understand. Wealth isn't about how much gold you have. It's about how much you can produce. More gold didn't create more wheat. It didn't build more ships or train more craftsmen. It just diluted the value of every coin in circulation. Spain had inflated its money supply not by printing, but by mining. The result was the same. The Spanish economy became dependent on gold imports. When the flow slowed, the economy seized up. Spain borrowed heavily, defaulted on debts multiple times, and eventually lost its status as a global power. The empire became rich in appearance and weak in reality. Spain printed power with gold instead of paper, but destroyed productivity in the process. The lesson? It doesn't matter if your money is made of gold, silver, or paper. If you flood the system faster than real wealth is created, the outcome is always the same. Section 4. Britain and the cost of empire. The British Empire ruled a quarter of the globe. The sun never set on British territory. London was the financial capital of the world. The British pound was the global reserve currency. But global dominance came at a price. 2 world wars drained Britain financially. During World War I, Britain borrowed massively from its own citizens, from its colonies, and eventually from the United States. By the end of World War II, Britain was effectively bankrupt. The empire had survived, but at what cost? To keep functioning, Britain expanded its money supply. It printed pounds to pay debts, rebuild infrastructure, and maintain its military. But the rest of the world was watching, and they began to ask a simple question: is the pound still worth what Britain says it's worth? The answer increasingly was no. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the world's powers met to design a new financial system. Britain lobbied hard to keep the pound as the global reserve currency. But the United States, now the world's largest creditor and industrial power, had a different idea. The dollar, backed by gold and American productivity, became the new standard. The pound was dethroned. Britain didn't disappear, its people didn't vanish, but its empire did. Over the next few decades, colony after colony gained independence. Britain's global influence shrank. Its economy struggled with inflation and stagnation. And once again, money changed first. The pound lost its dominance before Britain lost its colonies. The financial collapse preceded the political one. This is the pattern. When a currency weakens, the empire that issues it follows. Section 5. America's dollar moment. Now we arrive at the present. The U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. It's used for international trade, held by central banks, and trusted globally. But that trust is built on a foundation that shifted in 1971. For most of American history, the dollar was backed by gold. You could, in theory, take your dollars to a bank and exchange them for a fixed amount of gold. This system, called the Bretton Woods system, kept spending in check. But by the 1960s, the U.S. was fighting the Vietnam War, funding the space race, and expanding social programs. The bills were piling up. Other countries started to notice. France, in particular, began exchanging its dollars for gold. The U.S. gold reserves were draining. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made a shocking announcement. The United States would no longer convert dollars to gold. The gold standard was over. From that moment on, the dollar was backed by trust alone, and for decades it worked. America was productive, innovative, powerful. The world needed dollars to buy oil, to trade, to invest. But something changed. Debt exploded. In 1971, U.S. national debt was under $400 billion. Today, it's over $36 trillion. Deficits became normal. Balanced budgets became a relic of the past. Money printing became policy. During the 2008 financial crisis, the Federal Reserve created trillions of dollars through quantitative easing. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. government injected trillions more into the economy. Money was created at a scale and speed unprecedented in human history. And for a while, it seemed to work. Markets rebounded, unemployment fell, but inflation followed. Prices for food, housing, and energy surged. The middle class felt the squeeze. Savings lost value. The cost of living outpaced wage growth. This is the same pattern Rome faced. The same pattern Spain faced. The same pattern Britain faced. No empire in history has ever printed its way to long-term stability. So the question becomes, is America different? Or is it simply at a different point in the same cycle? Section 6. Why leaders always print. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Printing money feels painless at first. Raising taxes, that makes people angry. Politicians lose elections over tax hikes. Cutting spending, that means shutting down programs, firing workers, facing protests. Borrowing, eventually lenders stop lending or demand higher interest rates. But printing money, that's invisible, that's quiet, that's easy. The government can pay its bills, markets stay calm, the crisis is postponed, the cost is real but it's delayed. Inflation creeps in slowly, savings lose value gradually. The middle class shrinks over years, not overnight. By the time people notice, it's already too late. The debasement has already happened. The trust has already been broken. And once that trust is gone, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. This is why every empire in history has chosen the same path. Not because the leaders were evil, but because the alternative required courage, sacrifice, and political risk. And those are always in short supply. Section 7, the final warning. SIGNS history shows clear signals before collapse, rising debt that can never be repaid. When a nation's debt grows faster than its economy, the math stops working. Currency debasement. Whether it's shaving silver from coins or adding zeros to a digital ledger, the principle is the same. Wealth inequality. When the gap between rich and poor becomes a chasm, social cohesion breaks down, loss of public trust. When citizens stop believing in their institutions, in their money, in their future, that's when the final stage begins. These aren't theories. These aren't political talking points. They are patterns. Patterns that repeat across centuries, across continents, across every empire that ever rose and fell. And patterns don't care what country you live in. They don't care how powerful you think you are. They just repeat unless something changes. Can the cycle be broken? History is not destiny, but ignoring it has consequences. Every empire believed it could control money forever. Every emperor, every king, every president thought, we're smarter, we're stronger, we're different. None of them were. The question isn't whether the pattern exists. The question is whether we recognize it in time, because once money loses trust, everything else follows. The soldiers stop fighting, the citizens stop believing, the empire stops functioning. Rome fell, Spain faded, Britain shrank. Will America be different? Maybe. But only if we learn the lesson history keeps trying to teach us. You cannot print prosperity. You cannot debase your way to strength. You cannot break trust without consequences. The pattern is clear. The choice is ours. If you want to understand the patterns shaping America's future, subscribe to the American Pattern. Because history isn't behind us, it's happening again.